Which is the best Marvel movie? If you didn't think about Iron Man, I think you're wrong. Because I think Iron Man is the best movie Marvel has ever released, by far. And I want to talk about that idea in this video. Because this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently. So before this video, I was listening to the album of the music or the soundtrack of American Psycho, and I was wondering, like, I remember that American Psycho didn't make so much money at the box office the year of 2000 when it was released. And I checked. I think it's like on the spot 90 or 80 on the top box office list of the year 2000. I think it made like $30 million. And I think it had a budget of like $7 million. And in order to break even, you have to get back the money you put on advertising, which is basically 50% of the budget. And then you also have to pay the theaters. So to break even in movie business, you have to make roughly 2.5 as much as the budget. So they made some profit, American Psycho. But the thing is that American Psycho, this is a 26-year-old movie, and after the theater release, people could buy it on DVD, and people could also buy it on now it's streaming on platforms like Netflix and Disney. So they basically purchased the license to stream the movie for a period of time. So talking about business-wise, like you put in a little bit of money and or a little bit, $7 million. But you put in money to make the movie, and then you release it in theaters. You kind of get an okay box office. I mean, it's not great. There were like 90 other films, as I told you, that made more money that year of 2000, which was a great year for movies. But another thing, this is something I don't think a lot of people know about actually, or have thought about, because the effect of a movie is very interesting. So when you make a movie and it releases in the theater, you can get an extreme effect. And I'm going to tell you an example of this. So, Spider-Man No Way Home or Avengers Endgame. Those were two movies I went and saw in the theaters. I remember when I saw Avengers Endgame, and I thought it was like the best movie I'd ever seen. And at the time when I saw it, that was kind of my like initial reaction. And I remember the fight with Thanos in the end. I was kind of like, I've never been as afraid as of that fight. I thought it was gonna cut the head off of like Thor or someone, and I was just so afraid. And I remember I left the theater thinking this is the best movie of all time. And then the thing is, this was 7 years ago. This is 2019, if I remember correctly, and this was 7 years ago. And the thing is that I have not rewatched Endgame ever since. I've never rewatched Endgame fully. I've seen some clips. I watched a little bit of scenes here and there, but I've never rewatched the movie. Now we take a movie like Iron Man. I did not see Iron Man in the theaters. I was too young. I think my dad went and saw it in the theaters, and then he liked it so much, so he bought it as a DVD, and then I watched it at home when the DVD was released, I think, if I remember correctly. And I loved it when I saw it the first time. I was really hooked to it, which is kind of interesting. Like, if you really like something, it's usually because you like the character. And me being like 7 years old and liking the character of Iron Man, it says a lot about me as a young person. But that's not the topic of this video. But it is interesting, the idea of like you liking something in a movie example, and you kind of see yourself as the main character, which you could draw a lot of parallels from. But going back to Iron Man, I've rewatched Iron Man many times, like so many times. Now I know that Iron Man has been out for more than a decade longer than Endgame. That's true. But I have never rewatched a movie as much as I've rewatched Iron Man. I think I rewatched Iron Man like not yesterday, but like 3 days ago, because that's a great movie. And that really makes me like, so the big question in this video is, what makes a great movie? And or how do we determine a movie is great? It might be a better question. Like, is it the box office? Is it the reviews? So you could go to the reviews on IMDb, for example. Is it the letterboxed top 4? So you know the letterboxd where you can rank movies, and they go out and interview people in the movie industry, and then they ask people like, what are your top 4 movies? And then like one guy has collected a list of all the top 4. Like, is that the most accurate? And I think that the only thing you really can look at is how a time kind of stands the test of time. This is something that Quentin Tarantino talked about when he made Pulp Fiction. it got great reception. Like people loved it. And I think it was also a box office hit. I think it made a lot of money. People said it was great. And also, but Quentin Tarantino said in an interview, which I saw about in a YouTube video, that I don't know if this is a good movie. I don't care what people say today. I care what people say in 20 years. Then 20 years passed. I think that Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction was released in 96, if I remember correctly. Might be wrong here. And if you look at it, might even have, no, it's not. It might even have been 30 years since the movie released. I don't remember. You have to check the interview yourself. But I think it was 20 years. And after 20 years, Pulp Fiction is a movie that is, according to IMDb, one of the best movies ever made. And I think that, first of all, the number of people liking it or not, I think that metric is kind of like, I mean, the review people give on like IMDb, for example. So if you look at IMDb top 500, 250 movies, you will see that Shawshank Redemption is number one. Now, I could agree that Shawshank Redemption is the best movie of all time. I have thought that basically my whole life. But I think that it's so difficult to know for sure whether a movie is like 9.5 or 9.7 or whatever, 9.1 I think it is, or 9.3 on IMDb. Because rating a movie from 1 to 10, even if you have like millions of reviews, is still, according to me, not the best way to know like how great of a movie is this. Because you could take a movie like 2001. 2001 is a movie that is definitely not up there in top. Even I don't even think it's top 10 on IMDb. I mean, Interstellar, I think, is higher rated than 2001. I do not agree with that. I think 2001 is a much better movie than Interstellar ever could have been. I think that Stanley Kubrick, in particular, I think that he is the greatest movie director of all time in terms of really like making deep movies, like making movies that had never been done before, like basically making something that is. He set the tone for like talking about the influence. That's another thing. Like, how many people have Stanley Kubrick with 2001: A Space Odyssey influence? He's influenced James Cameron. He's influenced Christopher Nolan. He's influenced Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola. Like, there's so many people. He's basically. I actually searched on ChatGPT who has influenced the most directors of all time, and it's Stanley Kubrick. And another thing that is interesting with Stanley Kubrick, which is he is the top one person or movie director that was obsessed with reading books. His house was basically just a library, which I could basically see myself living in a house like that in the future. And according to IMDb, it's still not the best movie of all time, but it's been the most influential movie of all time in terms of influencing directors. Now, people could say Citizen Kane as well, and I'm not going to keep talking about that because it's so difficult to know, right? I think that 2001 is, according to me, the most influential movie in terms of influencing upcoming directors. It made Star Wars, which is basically one of the biggest franchises of all time, and so forth. So, but going back to the idea of like, how can we really know that a movie is so great? So you take The Dark Knight, for example. It's like number 2, or no, it's number 3, I think, after Godfather on IMDb. And I think it's so difficult. I think there's a lot of problems with giving like a 1 to 10 rating, because let's say I watch The Dark Knight. Now, I watch The Dark Knight and I think it's the best movie I've ever seen, and then I give it a 10 out of 10. But then it kind of grows on me, or it could be positively or negatively, or I might have given it like a 9. And then in 10 years time, I actually think it's because I've rewatched it. It's kind of, you kind of get away from this initial reaction to a movie. I think Endgame is kind of high up on the top movies of all time, which is stupid. I saw a guy talking about, I think that Citizen Kane is under Endgame. Like, that's when we know that things are really messed up, that we have a system that doesn't even work. And you can definitely think that I'm wrong here. Like, this is an open debate here, and I think that I'm all ashamed of my belief, and I'm a huge movie fan. And I think that the problem with giving a rating, as you might understand now, is that a movie, it's kind of, first of all, you might like a movie in a specific season of your life. So for example, I might love a romantic rom-com movie, because I mean that phase of my life where I'm kind of like drawn to relationships and having a partner and like love and a first love and like that kind of thing. But then you grow, and then you might be more interested into things like Stanley Kubrick and making 2001 and sometimes when you're younger, you watch E.T. and you watch Indiana Jones and a lot of Spielberg movies, because you get this excitement and adventure feeling. But I think that to really determine if a movie is great or not, you can't base it upon me giving a rating after I've seen a movie, because it will change with this test of time. That's basically what I'm saying. I think that the only real way to know how a big movie, how big of a movie, how great of a movie I've made is, first of all, the number of people have seen it. I think is first of all a great indication. And it has a lot to do with like word of mouth, I think, of like how did you get to know this movie. Then of course there are movies like that has not been seen by a lot of people, that are kind of niche, or not niche, but they're not your typical adventure movie, like 2001: A Space Odyssey, for example. And I might think that Interstellar is better than 2001 in 10 years. And that's the thing that I'm trying to tell you here, that I don't know what I would think in 10 years. But right now, when I saw 2001 after, for the first time actually, I've only seen it once, I thought it was one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And I actually laughed, because I thought this guy he was so ahead of his time. And he was such a genius. We still haven't understood how great of a movie director this guy was. And it's not only in terms of being a director, it's also in terms of like who wrote the movie. I think that, take for example, actually one of my favorite movies right now is The Social Network. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And the thing with that movie is that we have one of the greatest directors of all time, which is actually kind of getting pulled into David Fincher movies now. I have never really liked David Fincher before. I've seen Gone Girl, for example, and I've seen Seven once, and I've seen a lot of movies of his, and also the Zodiac, but I don't really like that. But now, with the stage I'm in my life right now, I really am interested in watching his movies. And I've liked Social Network, but I've never loved Social Network. But now, I think it's one of the best, if not the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Once again, it's because that's the stage I'm in my life. I'm at that stage in my life where that is the movie that I'm drawn to. And I will make a video about this in the future for sure, that is about what you're drawn to, which movies and music you like. It says scary. It's so much about you that it's scary. It's not going to be a topic of this video. But I think that in going back to like the Spider-Man No Way Home, which I touched upon, when I saw that movie in the theaters, it's the most insane movie experience I've ever had in my entire life. Nothing comes close. Maybe watching Billie Eilish movie, it's kind of the same experience. It's just not as wild as watching Spider-Man No Way Home was. But sorry for saying this, but I hate that movie now. I cannot rewatch it. I think it's so bad. According to me, it's probably one of the worst Spider-Man movies ever made. And I once again think that, and at the time when I saw it, I thought that this was like the best movie I've ever seen, or the best Spider-Man movie I've ever seen. Actually, that's the only time I've seen a movie twice in theaters. I actually wanted to see it 3 times. I've never gone to the same movie. And I remember calling my mom, and she was like, "Why? That's so strange." And once again, this test of time. I have never rewatched Spider-Man after that. I cannot rewatch Spider-Man in No Way Home after that, because I think it's so bad. And I think this is kind of where I'm also kind of I could start talking a little bit about. I don't think Avengers Doomsday is going to be a good video film. I think it's going to be bad. And now I might go. I will go see it 100%. And I will probably think it's exciting when I see it. But I think that in 10 years, I think it's not going to be a movie that people are going to talk about. And I might be wrong. It might be this insane movie that people talk about in the niche of like Marvel fans, for example, in the community of Marvel fans. But I still think that Endgame is an example of it is the biggest, if we discount inflation, it's the biggest movie event of all time in terms of box office. And it's still a movie I don't think that people like when it's been like only 7 years now. It's like I think that people don't like it, and I've seen so many films on YouTube where people say I really dislike Endgame. And I actually saw a film by a YouTube video, which I love. This is the best thing about YouTube, because you get people's really, really good videos about ideas about, like, some person actually found out that I think Infinity War is actually like the second movie in the Pirates trilogy. I don't know. Is it Dead Man's Chest? I think it's Dead Man's Chest. I think so. He actually basically figured out that Infinity War is basically exactly the same idea as, or kind of the same plot as Dead Man's Chest. Dead Man's Chest was a huge box office success, and I think that is actually, by watching that movie again, I think that's a good movie. I don't think Avengers Endgame is a good movie. I don't think I even like Infinity War now. I think I'm too old for the comic book movies. I think that might be the reason, but I think it's still still the idea that when I saw Infinity War, I thought it was the best movie of all time. I basically kind of freaked out when I went out of the movie theater, and then when the test of time has happened, it's not a great movie. It's actually, according to me, a bad movie. And then, yeah, going back to like Pulp Fiction, this is a movie that stood the test of time. And Pulp Fiction is a movie that now still people can see and love. Now, this is what I find interesting about movies, and what I think is a good trying to understand if a movie is great or not. First of all, you will never know if a good movie is good or not until some time has elapsed. And I think that Quentin talks about 20 years. I think that you could talk about it in a decade. I think it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years, it could be, I don't know how long it is. It could be years, but first of all, we have to agree that you will only know if a movie is good or not if it stands the test of time. And this is the problem. That this kind of is the core problem with IMDb ratings. It's because the people who ranks the movie 1 to 10, take The Dark Knight for example, they give their initial reaction to the movie, and then probably their taste to film will first of all change, but also they will kind of like, now we know that The Dark Knight is a good example of this is a good movie, and it's actually grown a lot in me. I actually think that Batman Begins is the best movie, which is a very unpopular opinion, but I think Batman Begins is the best movie, and I think that because that is the movie that has always been kind of what I feel drawn to. Like, my life feels like, or out of those three movies, that first Batman Begins feels like this is my life the most. Like, being in the face of like having a lot of upsets, a lot of obstacles, and being like outcast and then being thrown out, having to kind of reinvent yourself. And I love that character part of Bruce Wayne, and then I love that movie. But then a year ago, they showed all of the Batman movies in theaters, one after another, and I went and saw it with a friend of mine who's actually passed away. But I went and saw that a trilogy of mine, which will be a memory for my life. And I actually, for the first time of my life, I loved The Dark Knight more than The Batman Begins. Now, I've seen Batman Begins. This is a movie I've seen many times. Once again, it's a movie that has stood the test of time. I can rewatch it so many times. I cannot rewatch any Marvel movie except for like Iron Man. And I know that people would say that you can rewatch Captain America. I never really liked Captain America as a character. That's probably also an unpopular opinion. I might like Captain America in the future. Maybe, probably, right? I like Iron Man. And then, so I watched Batman Begins many times, but because it's such a great movie. And then, for the first, I never really liked The Dark Knight, and it never really talked to me. And then I watched it last summer, and I loved it for the first time of my life. I thought it was such a great movie. I liked it more than Batman Begins. I was like, oh my god, this is an amazing movie. Why haven't I seen this before? I think first of all it was because it was the first time I saw it in theaters. I did not see The Dark Knight in theaters. I was too young when it was released in theaters. But So I started in theaters. That makes you like super focused. You really focus on the movie. You're not checking your phone. You're like, and you kind of get into flow state. So you're kind of like really experiencing the film. Which is, I could talk about that, like the argument of why we should have theaters left, because you kind of get this forced focus, which makes the movies better to experience, which I don't think is talked about a lot. I think that we Nolan touches upon it, but I think we could talk more about that, why a movie gets better when you actually focus when you see it. Anyway, I loved it, and I thought it was so good. Now, if I would have seen, if I rated The Dark Knight the first time I saw it, I would have rated it kind of bad, maybe 6 out of 10. But then now I rated like 9 out of 10. But you see how, and you might be able to change your rating, probably, right? I think you might be able to do that. So this might be like not as big of a problem as I think it is, but still, I don't. The problem is still there. That in 10 years, I might think that the Dark Knight Rises is the best movie out of the three. And this is the interesting thing about art, that in time, and when it kind of grows in you, and you kind of see it again in different phases of your life, that's when you kind of know whether you've crafted something that lives after your whole lifetime. And so then I might this is one, so to try to figure out like how great is a movie. I think first of all we have to take a look at how many people have seen this film, because I think that says a lot about a movie. I think that it's usually best like in business, a great product will not be hidden for a long time. And then you might say, okay, why is people like, why is like 2001 a movie that not a lot of people have seen? Like if you take a look at a number of ratings on IMDb, you will see that it doesn't have a lot of ratings compared to like Interstellar. Now this is what I mean by this test of time. That is an old movie. That is an old movie. But I still think that the more mature people will become, the more they will appreciate 2001 than like a movie like Interstellar. And I think I think it has a lot to do with like how mature you are in life. I think that, like I touched upon earlier, like you're drawn to like adventure movie like Indiana Jones. I love Indiana Jones movies. Like that, I almost want to cry when I just start watching Indiana Jones 3 because it means so much to me. It's almost like in my DNA. It's almost like when my grandpa saw it in theaters, because my grandpa was a huge Indiana Jones fan. It's almost like he loved Indiana Jones 3 so much that kind of became a part of my DNA, which is so insane. Okay, now when I think about it, that is impossible. Okay, yeah, but it could be that he influenced my mom, who then kind of changed my DNA. I don't know, but the funny thing is that I love Indiana Jones 3. I think it's one of the. I almost want to cry when I start watching that film because it has such a deep connection to me for some reason. And Indiana Jones 3 is a movie that I kind of watched because I kind of get this childlike flashbacks to like being a kid again. And I think that's one of the reasons why Steven Spielberg has been called like I don't remember the character's name again. But he never keeps making films that kind of represent his childhood, even though it's very old. And I think that's another. So maturing to what you're drawn to. Like I've been really drawn to Eyes Wide Shut recently, which I've never liked that movie. I've never been interested in it. And then I saw it, and I cannot stop thinking about it. And now we're talking even more further about the problems. Like we cannot track how much people, first of all, how many times a person sees a movie. Another point, how much people thinks about a movie. And this is the problem with this is the problem when you make a movie. So take for example The Weeknd's movie, Hurry Up Tomorrow. I saw it. I didn't like it at all. I thought it had its moments, but I think that they really played. It was too much. Trying to use metaphors and trying to get a feeling of like how it feels for him, but he's the only person in the world that knows how it feels to be this one of the world's biggest artists, if not the world's biggest artist. and people hated it. Like, first of all, it was a huge flop in box office. People gave it like 0 out of 10, and I don't know, maybe in 50 years that movie will be appreciated. That's the thing we can't forget about. We can't judge a movie by what happened, and that's what we do. We judge a movie. So take a movie like American Psycho. To go back to the kind of the main idea of this film now. American Psycho was not even in the top 10 box office. It was not even in the top 80, I think. I think it was top 90. But of all the movies released in 2000, the movie that has the most ratings out of them all is actually Gladiator. So, but other than Gladiator, it's American Psycho. And I think that now we're gonna kind of starting to see that, okay, out of all this, and you could do this for I've done this for many movies. So I've gone to different years, like which movie actually has the most number of ratings compared to the initial reaction of people. And I've seen a big difference. Like, you could have a movie that was, so I think Ocean's 11 is a movie that I was interested in, because I've always loved Ocean's 11, and I actually saw Steven Soderbergh's, the director's, first movie. I think it's called Sex, Lies, and Videotapes, and I love that movie. And I was kind of interested in seeing once again, okay, which movies have kind of are people still watching, because this is a movie that is like over 25 years old now. I think it's exactly 25 years old. And I once again went to 2001 and saw all the movies. I think Shrek was like the big movie of that year, but Ocean's 11 is at the it did not make the most box office that year, but it's up there with having the most number of ratings. So it's basically this idea that a movie can have this either extremely well box office or this kind of low box office. But and there are other examples of this where like a horror movie has been released and it's been like there's one horror movie, I don't know if it's called Bridge to Terabithia or something in English, but that actor made a short film, I think. No. It's Jake Gyllenhaal. Now I remember. Jake Gyllenhaal made a horror film. I think it's it might be his breakthrough movie, which is also an interesting topic. Like, what movies were people's breakthrough movies? That movie kind of flopped at box office, and then it became one of the biggest horror movies of all time, I think, because of DVD. It became so big on DVD. People bought it, saw it at home. Which is also interesting. Like, horror movies are bigger on DVD than at box office, and so forth. So I think it's super interesting to see that you could have a movie that makes the biggest box office of the year, like Endgame, but after 10 years, it's not even something that people talk about anymore. People don't think about it. And then you have movies like Eyes Wide Shut that I think did not actually have a good box office. Actually, I think they lost money. I think, but it's a movie that people are still talking about. People are thinking about a lot. Even though it's like almost 30 years since it was released, and I think that's why also the Letterboxd top 4 by people working in the industry is kind of the best. I know it's not. I think it's. I love that list because that list includes movies that, once again, so they basically, I think, let's say the average person they're asking is 45 years old, and they are like movie directors, producers, actors, all these different people working in the movie industry, and then they're asked like, give me your top 4 films, and then you collect all that data and you see a list. Now I think we're starting to see a little bit like, okay, which movies are people, because first of all, they're like, people have kind of lived for a long time, so they're kind of, it's like a movie has lived in their minds, because once again we can have the time of how when you release the movie and then how long it's been released, but also the time of a person, like how long has a person lived and how long has that person been able to kind of like see different movies and so forth. Because you can once again you can see one movie. I thought Interstellar was good, but not like as good as people say it is. And then I saw 2001. I was like, no, I think 2001 is a lot better. So what I'm trying to say is that you can see a movie and then you happen to find another movie that kind of changes your opinion about that other movie. And there are also instances where a movie like Can't Buy Me Love, which is a movie that I love that movie so much. I think it's actually one of my all-time favorites because it kind of touches upon these big things that I want to make a movie about, which is basically school, the period you're in school, but also love and friendship. And I love that. I think it's kind of touch. It gets the feeling of the high school vibe perfectly in a few scenes. And but that movie has gotten so bad ratings. It's insane how bad ratings that movie has gotten. So I think that I will not really get any further than this. This is kind of my first touch. I think I've given you a lot of interesting information in this video, and I hope I've kind of made you think. But the idea that we can't really understand, we don't really know whether a movie is great or not, and it's difficult to really know if a movie is great or not until you like live a lifetime. And then movies, there's a lot, you see a lot of movies, and there's a lot of time between the movies you see. But I also think that, take books for example. I'm reading Meditations now by Marcus Aurelius. Now wasn't even intended to be a book, and this book is still read about today. And this book is, I don't know if it's how many thousands of years old it is, but it's very, very old. And that book has literally lasted or stand the test of time. It's the same thing with classics. That's why I'm kind of drawn to classics now, because classics are when you kind of know that something has been living for such a long time. That's when you know that they have kind of touched upon some truth. I think that's kind of what we can draw as a conclusion, that when something lives for thousands of years, or even a lifetime, is out of our human understanding, because we can't understand that something is made the day that I was born, and then I die. Let's say I die at age 100, and then that a movie, for example, if Ocean's 11, I think, was made the year I was born, and that movie is still played after I've died. I don't think we can grasp that. In terms of like how big of an impact that just one simple movie can have, or a book. And for example, I've loved Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan has been my favorite director my whole life, basically. The Prestige has been something I've been obsessing about that movie, and I've watched all of his movies. But now, when I've kind of grown, I think that he's not my favorite director anymore. I actually prefer Stanley Kubrick to Christopher Nolan, and I also think that Christopher Nolan, there are only a few of his movies that I really genuinely love, like Interstellar. No, I mean Inception. I don't actually rewatch Interstellar so much at all. I don't really like that movie, but there are people who think it's the best movie that's ever been made. For me, I don't really like it, and I don't really like The Prestige anymore, when that was kind of one of the favorite movies of my entire life. But then there are movies like Catch Me If You Can by Steven Spielberg, which is a movie that I saw for the first time. I don't even know when I think I saw it the first time with my dad, because it was playing on the TV. Now, this is a long time. We're talking like, I think this was like when I was 2000. It's so difficult to know, 9, 10, 11. I have no idea when. But it was a long time ago, and it's a movie that I've always thought is one of the best movies of all time, and I think I still watch it today, and I love it so much, even though everything I've been through in my life. But then and you could then start talking about, okay, that's a very lonely character. He feels very lonely and misunderstood, and that let's say that in 5 years I'm not lonely anymore. Let's say. Then I might hate that movie, because I think it's so depressing to watch, and then I might love Interstellar. Who knows? But I think that the main idea here is that and I think books are actually more interesting to me, and I think that books are more interesting to me because books, first of all, is a better experience, I think, in terms of like I read Dostoevsky's Death of no, that's Notes from Underground. I read Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground, and I was so I could fantasize and imagine the all the things that were happening, and I think that when you watch a movie, you can't really fantasize or imagine because you see the picture on the screen, right? But when you read a book, and this is why I think a lot of people prefer books. I think I think most people prefer a book over a movie because you can kind of get these details down. You visualize it on a completely different level than you do with a movie. And I think that right now, I'm most drawn to like Oscar Wilde, his best-selling book. I'm drawn to Dostoevsky. I'm drawn to Tolstoy. I'm drawn to Dumas. I'm drawn to Dante. I'm drawn to Homer. There's so many classics I'm drawn to because these people have written something, or Shakespeare, and it's still talked about today. And they've not only like they have experienced stuff that not so take someone like I really don't want to give a name here, but take any director basically. Most of the time, the directors who are making like a movie that are really tragic have not really experienced true tragedy, like Shakespeare. Shakespeare lost his son. And that kind of changed his entire life, and he never got back after that happened. And you can take a person like the author of Viktor Frankl, like the author of Man's Search for Meaning, who basically lost his mother, his father, his whole entire family. You could take a person like Dostoevsky, who also was seconds from dying. Like people who has experienced these things that you cannot compare it to people who has then not experienced it. And I think this is an idea that I have in movies, that I don't really want to make a movie about something I have no experience of, because it's not going to be truthful. So that's kind of, I have a third script for a movie, which is called Following Your Excitement, which is basically about a guy who I'm not going to tell that story today, but I have not experienced the story that I have in mind. And that's why I think that I cannot make this movie. Because how can I make a story about something I have not experienced? And I think this is something that Denzel Washington talks a lot about. About you can, and not really maybe to the extreme that I'm talking about, but I think that the truly great stuff, like Shakespeare's Macbeth or any, like you really have to experience a lot of things to be able to really make great stuff. And that's so. If you want to take a look at people who make work that are movies as well, live life to the fullest, and I think that's more important than learning how to make good movies, like how to make a good script, how to film a good scene. I think that the most important aspect of making great art is that you've lived. Like the I don't know who the author I have to search this painting. Yeah, The Scream. The painting The Scream. Who was the Edvard Munch. Edvard Munch, who he was a Norwegian artist. He made The Scream. I think you've seen the painting The Scream. Now, I don't remember. I don't remember what happened in his life. I think that he lost his mother. Yeah, he lost his mother and his sisters through they both passed away through a disease, and he felt this like anxiety that he's kind of trying to portray in the painting The Scream. Now, The Scream is one of the world's most famous paintings, and I think that art is it's kind of the same, even though if it's a book or if it's a movie or if it's a painting, if it's a song. I know that the best songs people have made. So take for example, "Every Breath You Take" by The Police. that song was written by Sting. It's one of the most played songs of all time on Spotify. And that song was written when he had split up with his wife, and he was so defeated as a man. He was so, I think, lost. And he made this. He wrote down in like 30 minutes the song. And the same thing, like James Bond, Ian Fleming, who made James Bond, was actually an agent. He was actually an intelligent agent, and lived a lot of the stories that are about James Bond. Now, of course, there is also fiction to it, but he lived the story, which is why I think we love James Bond so much. And another example is, so I talked about the Police. The Weeknd. The Weeknd's most played song is "Blinding Lights." I think I think it's the most streamed song on Spotify, and I think that if you could take a look at what the lyrics mean, but I think that the core of this the album, which is I think that song kind of couldn't have happened if it weren't for the other songs, like for the album. I think that I can also talk about that, like you make an album, and then you have all these different songs. That's why you get a hit, because they kind of, so even if you make 9 songs that are not hits, those 9 songs made you able to do that one song that was a hit. Anyway, I think that The Weeknd made an album after he split up with I think Bella Hadid was his girlfriend, and he was once again also this man who felt like he'd given up on life. And or not giving up on life, but he felt really bad, I think. And then he made the most streamed song on Spotify of all time. I think that you can kind of see what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get is that live life to the fullest. That's probably, I think, what the most important. If the biggest art person of all time would give one advice, is live life to the fullest, because that is how you make truly great art. Now you could sit and be somebody who kind of reads a lot, like I actually am doing. But I don't really experience life. I'm just like reading. I'm not out there. I'm not experiencing life. I will never be able to make great art that way. I will only be able to kind of touch upon what I've read about. This is a belief I have. So for me to make a truly great movie about love, for example, if I want to make a movie about love in school, I have to live that. Otherwise, how can I be able to tell the truth if I have not even experienced it? And I think that's why I am so drawn to people like Dostoevsky and all these Penguin Classic authors, because these are people who have lived life in a way that I will probably never do in my entire life. I will never be close to living like Viktor Frankl. I can never possibly try to imagine how it was for him. I tried yesterday to imagine like my parents dying, my brother dying, my grandmother dying, and like I have nobody left. I can't even imagine it. It might be because my brain don't even want to imagine it, but I can't even imagine that, even if I try. And that is how you truly, and I think it's so beautiful in Shakespeare. I actually saw the movie. That when you are, and this is, I now could start talking about like, let's end the video here, because this is also like I think that to truly understand life and love, I think, and most importantly love, you have to experience deep trauma. Now that might sound crazy, but I think that the people who understand love the most are the people who have experienced loss and trauma through like death of a child, like Charlie Munger, for example. I think that when you experience, and this is a sensitive topic, I understand that. I still think that Shakespeare could never have written his plays that became Hamnet or Hamlet or Macbeth or any of his plays that became his most known, if he wouldn't have experienced life in the way he did. And I think that there are people who experience trauma, and there are like different paths you can take. You can take the path of like just giving up on life and just feeling self-pity, which basically is what Charlie Munger thinks you should avoid, like the plague. Or you can try to, what Shakespeare did, try to kind of see his son in art. He wanted so desperately to feel and see his son that he wrote this play that made the mother. It's a beautiful scene in the end of the movie. Yeah, she saw her son on stage, and that's why Shakespeare did what he did, because that was the only way for him. He was kind of like, he was so mad at the universe that I'm gonna do this, so I'm gonna be able to see my son. And that of course he made a great art, but I think that even more, like if you take it a step further, I think that is when you understand love. And I think that when you experience evil, for example, or suffering, I think, and I can only talk from my own experience. I have not experienced suffering like those people, not even close. But I have experienced parts of my life where I felt like I've suffered. And after those moments, I feel like I've kind of become so much more humble to life. And I've also become so much more appreciative of love and of these simple things in life. And I think that is, and then trying to like convey love and make people understand love through art, which nobody that but you understands, because nobody has experienced what you have experienced. There are probably people, and I think that is art. I think that is the definition of art. When you experience stuff in life, you live life to the fullest, you experience life, and you might suffer loss, like Shakespeare, but you transform that into into art, and that art is love and truth, and you can kind of get a sense, a taste of what really love is. And when I watch The Passion of the Christ, which is a movie that is also means a lot to me, and I used to listen to the music of like crucifixion, the song Crucifixion, and the emotions that they're trying to convey. Now, these people have not lived the life that Jesus lived, but they're trying to touch what the life Jesus lived, and the suffering, the passion. Suffering is passion. It's almost, it's just a feeling. It's a feeling. I don't even have to say anything. I just have to experience the love that is portrayed in the song and the movie, and that just, for me, listening to Crucifixion song, in the middle of that song, I can feel this love, and I'm probably not even close to the love that you feel like if you have experienced true suffering, but I can kind of get a feeling of like a taste of it, basically, like I told you, of this love, and it makes me want to cry. Just sitting in that, I remember as I'm sitting in my apartment, I'm just listening to this song, and I'm trying to like, and I'm not even on a conscious level anymore. It's so much above consciousness. It's just on a deep soul level. I can feel a little bit of that love, and it's stronger than anything else in this entire world. Now, I went really deep now, but I think that I'm gonna try to sum it up now. So, what really makes a great movie great? I think that at least in I have a desire, and I think that desire is planted by someone to make a feature film about love. About love. A girlfriend-boyfriend love, and a love that, that love between a girl and a boy who love each other. And I know that my whole life, that when I look at my whole life, and the moments of the things that I've been thinking the most about are the suffering And the moments in my life where I felt like I've suffered. I don't want to talk about that details in this video, but I look at my whole life and I see what has been what. So I'm 25 years old. I'm soon 25, and I look at my whole life. Say it's a quarter of my life has passed, and I look at my life, and there are like an instant, a moment I think about in my life, or a period of my life I think about it, and it's about a girl. And what I have realized, the more I realize, the more I grow, is that instead of feeling the self pity that Charlie Munger tells us to avoid like the plague, I try to. The best thing that I can do is this suffering, which is I don't even want to say suffering, because it's no suffering at all compared to like reading Viktor Frankl. I haven't done it yet, but it gives so much perspective into. I've experienced no suffering at all. I've been lucky, but it makes me realize that I can take that moment of my life where I felt like I've suffered, and I can transform that into art, and try to make people feel what I feel when I watch Crucifixion Song, this love. And I think that if you do that, if we collectively do that, we can change the world, literally. Because if you make art that speaks to people, and it speaks on a soul-to-soul level, you get a little glimpse of what life could be. This love. And for some people it's music, for some people it's movies, for some people it's paintings, so for some people it's plays and books. But if you choose the art form that is made for you, and you take the suffering you've had and you transform it into this understanding of love, and you being so humble, and you can make something that people see, and it's like they don't even think it, they don't even feel it. It's so much more deeper, but this love that I'm talking about, and it's gonna awaken something in them and it's doing that in me, of like, what is life really about? And wow, I think this is I'm talking about so big things, and I don't know why, but this is what I think is kind of the biggest thing you can do in life, and you kind of give meaning to the suffering, which is basically what Viktor Frankl I think is talking about in Man's Search for Meaning. You take this suffering, and then you transform it to this love, and this understanding of love that most people have never experienced. And then you try to make other people experience it, which only you can, because you kind of have to experience this suffering to understand it. And then you make an art like Shakespeare, and you kind of get this. When people see Shakespeare, I think people feel on a soul-to-soul level this mother to son love, or father, more specifically father to son love. And this father to son love is something that most fathers don't experience. I think most fathers definitely and hopefully never experience this loss, which then makes you realize how much you love that person. I think that you can never really understand how much you love someone until they're gone, because that's when you for the first time realize, okay, that person meant so much, because there's so much love now that you want to give, you can't give to them, and then it becomes grief. I can understand a little bit, very little, of the father-son love that Shakespeare had for his son. But that love is stronger than anything else, anything, any, and I literally mean anything. And imagine if we could share art to each other from what you have experienced, and you get this moment where you're in the movie theater, for example, and it's just quiet, and it's just so take for example La La Land, in the ending, with Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. There's no words spoken, and it's just this love for each other that you kind of feel on a very, very deep level. And this is how we do true change. Because I think that this is going to be the ending of the video now, but I think that the only real way for someone to change is to know that there is a better way. So I believe in Jesus, and I believe that the Bible is truth, and I believe that God has written the Bible, and I believe that He, the Creator, knows what's best for us, and He wants what's best for us because He loves us. And I think that most people who are like addicted to something, so they're basically sinning. So let's say you're sinning with lust, for example, because that is I think the biggest sin. No, the biggest sin is actually pride, but I think that after pride then comes lust, and I think that this lust, sinning in lust, I think that the only way for people to really change is for people to know that there is something, and to know you have to experience that there's something better. So, for example, if you're addicted to if you're addicted to sleeping around, for example, and according to the Bible, you should have one you marry to, and then that should only be the only person that you make love to. And I think that you will not change the behavior of sleeping around if you don't truly believe that the love is better with one person. And you will only know that from experience. But I think that art can make some people change. So the only way for people to really change is to know that there is something better, and to experience that better and know therefore that there is something better. That's the only way to change. And there could be many sins that happen. But I think that there is a better way. And that better way is what I believe is what Jesus talks about. And I will only truly change. I mean, true change is basically never going back to, for example, say an addiction. You have to believe that there is, and you believe it by experience, that there is something better. And then when you make a movie, and you can kind of get a feeling of that, feeling of this deeper love, that's when people change. That's when people change, and people change for the better. That's when we can help each other out. And I think that's when we can all change the world. So thank you so much for watching. I know that this is my thoughts has been going everywhere, and I know that I'm not good yet at conveying what I'm trying to say, but I hope that you get what I'm trying to say here. And I think that the best takeaway here is you have to live life to the fullest, and then make art to help other people along their way who has not lived life like you have, so we can all live life in the best way possible. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope I see you in another video.